Hello, I'm Michael Redmond, professional Go player. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to make a living shape for groups that have been surrounded. And we call this making two eyes. So I'm going to start with a small black group that's going to be surrounded. And it looks like it has 1 point of territory, and that's here. It looks like black has 1 point here, but that's not going to be good enough for this black group to survive, because white can play here, taking the last liberty of these 3 black stones and capture them, taking them off the board. And in the rules video I did discuss how it's possible for white to play inside at a point where it looked like white had no liberties, but because white is in the act of capturing those 3 black stones, white is allowed to play in here. So this is something I did discuss in the rules video. And if you are not so sure about this, you can always go back and look at it again. So let's make black's territory just a little bit bigger and see how that changes things. So if black has a territory with 2 points, and as we're calling the living shape, we're calling it 2 eyes, maybe 2 points is good enough. It turns out that this 2 points is not good enough. First of all, we'll look at what black might do. If black were to play first, black has 2 points inside that what black could play, but they wouldn't help black very much, because actually black would be filling up their own liberties, and white would be able to capture it with this move. So black doesn't really want to play anything inside there, and say black plays away, then white will, in an actual game, white will leave it also because it's already dead. But if white were to play inside here, that would put these 4 black stones, these 4 stones, in Atari. White would be threatening to capture next, like this. Black can actually capture this white stone. Black can play here to capture it, but that doesn't do any good because black has only 1 liberty. Let's just take 1 move back and show you that again. Black has only 1 liberty there at this point, so white could immediately take it. And if black continues to play away, then white will be able to capture here. And since there was nothing that black could do, both players would just leave it as a dead group. Now, to get closer to the main point in this video, let's look at a slightly larger group. Okay, this black group has 3 points of territory, and I'm talking about the 3 points that are surrounded by a black wall. And when you have 3 points, it's starting to look like it could be a living group. So to start with, I'm going to talk about what happens if black plays the first move locally. And black's best move is to divide this territory into 2, which would be this point. And the value of this move is that by dividing black's territory into 2 points, 2 separate sections, black has made 2 liberties which cannot be filled at the same time. For instance, if white plays a stone here, this stone is completely surrounded by black stones on both sides. So it's not a move that white is allowed to play. It's an illegal move which does not have any liberties, and it cannot exist on the board. So it goes off the board. It's not a legal move. And the same can be said of this move, which is not a legal move. It's surrounded by 3 black stones and has no liberties, so it's going to die. All of the black stones are connected to have that 1 point open in the corner. If white plays the other one, black has an open point here. Since black stones are all connected, it is a liberty that all of those stones share. So even at the moment white plays that move, it is not in the act of capturing the black group. So it's not allowed for white to do that. Therefore, this black group is going to be alive throughout the game. The only way it could possibly die is if black filled that, which would be very bad. So black does not want to do that. Black wants to keep the 2 eyes open. If black had made a mistake and played some other point, let's take a look at black playing here. Now this black territory has 2 points, but it looks very similar to a previous shape that we looked at, in which white can play an Atari here, and now white is threatening to capture all of the black stones. And the white stone, since it had an extra liberty here, was not an illegal move, it was a legal move. So if black captures it, then white can still capture the whole group. So it's very important to divide your territory into 2, like this. Now to look at what might happen if white plays first. White's move is also a very similar idea. White wants to stop black from dividing the territory into 2. So white would play at this point also. and now there's no way for black to divide the territory into two. In fact, any move that black might play would just lead to black's being captured on the next move. And if black leaves it, white will leave it too, but white could always, if white wants to, white could fill this liberty. Black would capture the two stones maybe, white could fill the liberty again, and eventually this black group is going to be captured. So playing in the middle there, preventing black from dividing into two was the key point. If white had not done that, and by mistake played some other point like this, then black would be very happy to capture that stone and now have a 2-eye shape. So this is the shape that we call 2 eyes. Now let's get into some slightly different shapes that also have 2 eyes. One that I find to be sort of interesting is this shape where black stones seem to be disconnected. There seems to be 2 sets of black stones, this group of 3 and this group of 3, but in actual practice are connected to form a 6-stone group. And that's because both this point and this point, these 2 points that are black's 2 eyes inside that shape, are both points that it's impossible for white to play a stone on. So white cannot attack these black stones in any way, and for practical purposes they're completely connected. For instance, if white had played here, this move would have been surrounded by 4 black stones, and it would be illegal because it would not be allowed to exist on the board. And this point in the corner is also the same thing, it's illegal. So we could make another shape in the center, which is very similar. Black does have 2 eyes, and both of these points are illegal for white to play. And when you make 2 eyes, usually it's when you've maybe invaded an opponent's area, and so your stones are isolated and they don't have any friendly stones to build territories with, and so you're limited to just the 2 eyes. When you're invading your opponent's territories, sometimes you get sort of squeezed like this. Now I'm using this example to show that you have to have a very solid wall surrounding your eyes. And so this is an example of what is called a false eye. If it's white's turn to play, white can play here. And this puts this black stone in Atari. So while this position looks like black has formed 2 eyes, the eye on the left here, this one, is not a real eye. It's what's called a false eye because it's possible for white to actually capture that stone by playing here and taking that black stone off the board, which would put the remaining black stones in Atari. It would be threatening to capture them. Otherwise, if black connects here, then the whole black group is in Atari also. So that was not a real eye. Going back to the starting position here, if black plays this point, then black's wall around the 2 eyes becomes complete, and black does have a living shape. Just 2 points of territory with all of these black stones used to make it is not usually very efficient. It's just something that happens when you've been surrounded and you want to avoid being captured. There are some shapes that are a bit more territory, in which case you don't have to actually divide it into 2. So here I'm going to show you one more shape, which is like this. In this shape, black has a territory of 4 points. Quite often a 4-point territory is going to be alive. That's because when white plays first here, for instance here, black still has the opportunity to divide the territory into 2. So in this territory there's an eye here and an eye here. And even though that white stone inside black's territory is allowed to stay on the board for now, it's not going to connect up to any white stones on the outside. And if white continues with a move here, that would be an illegal move. It would fill the final liberty of this group of 2 stones, and white would not be allowed to stay on the board. So that's an illegal move that white cannot play. So this is an example of a slightly larger living shape. This is also a territory of 4 points, which is alive as it stands, because if white plays inside, then black can still divide the territory into 2. And that would have an eye here and an eye here. Otherwise, if white plays the other side, it's very similar. It's the same thing. If white plays here, black can play here, and it's divided into this eye, and these 2 points are another eye. There is a shape with 4 points that is not alive, so I'll show you that one now. This shape is not alive because black cannot divide it into 2 sections. It's dead as it stands, actually. Even if black plays here, if white prevents black from dividing that territory into 2 by playing here, then it's just going to be one eye, and eventually this black group is going to die. So for instance, like this. White can put it into Atari and eventually capture it. So that's a shape that is not alive. And finally, I would like to make sure that you understand that 2 points of territory, using a lot of stones to do that, is not always the best strategy. So for instance, in my videos about actual games, you might see larger territories like this, or like this. Usually these territories just are okay as they stand, because even if white plays inside, it's very easy for black to divide it into 2 sections. That would be somewhere around here would be one of the eyes, and capturing this white stone. Obviously the white stone doesn't have room to make 2 eyes. Black would have a living shape here anyway. So the larger territories are generally okay, provided you have a solid wall around them. So that was my explanation of living with 2 eyes. It's very important when you get into some tactical fighting, and especially when you're trying to invade your opponent's territory. So it's something that will come up as you continue to play Go. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you liked it, and please subscribe to see more videos like this. Thank you.